9 out of 10 gardens you go by will have a lawn in it. It's such an important part of a garden for so many people. It's a great place for recreation. It's a great bit of green space for you to just look at. Some people just love to see a nice striped lawn, but it certainly is a real good gap filler in any garden. And today we're going to talk about how to create a new lawn. You might have an area in your garden that you're not sure what to do with, an area you don't use, an old veg garden that you don't grow anything in anymore, and turfing it will make it into such a usable space. So we're doing exactly that here now, and I'm going to go through the process of how we do it in this video, just to give you a few top tips of how you could do it yourself. Right, so we've taken delivery of our soil. It's specially blended for the job in hand. It's a mixture of mushroom compost, composted bark, and washed or what you might call river sand. Now the compost, the mushroom compost and the composted bark are great because that organic matter is going to give the grass a really good start in life, and it's going to continue feeding it, which will make the lawn lovely and lush and green. The sand is equally as important because it gives the soil body, it gives it strength, it absorbs any compaction when you walk on it, and also it's great for drainage. So any water that goes onto the grass when it rains will just seep through down below and drain away without it being a boggy old mess. So when you're creating a new lawn, the one thing you've got to do is make sure that the space that grass is going to grow on is right for it. Otherwise you could just end up creating a bog garden rather than a usable lawn. Now what we've done here where we're creating this new lawn is we've blinded the area off with some really good soil that's been blended exactly for the job in hand. So now we've got all the soil levelled out and blinded off, the next thing we need to do is compact it. Now we need to compact it so that when anybody walks on it they aren't going to sink, but at the same time we need to be careful that that level of compaction isn't too great that when it rains the water sits on the top and you become waterlogged and your lawn isn't usable. So what we do is we call it heel towing, and we simply just go across the entire area to be turfed, walking like this. Now when you first do this as a landscaper you feel a right plonker. It comes naturally to me. I've been doing it that long, I don't really care how I look, but what I'm doing is I'm actually putting all my weight onto my heels and I'm walking across that area. And in the process of doing that, I'm compacting it, but I'm only compacting it as much as any other human being could possibly compact it. I know that sounds a bit bonkers, but what it means is whenever anybody walks across this area, across this lawn in the future, they aren't going to sink because it's under compacted. It's going to feel firm when they walk on it, but also it guarantees that it's not over compacted, because like I said before, if it's over compacted, when it rains that water will just sit on the top, it'll become waterlogged and your lawn just won't be usable. Right, so this area has now been compacted with the heel toe method. What we need to do next is rake it back over. Now what that does is it exposes any undulations in the soil. It shows where we've maybe just not quite got enough in or whether we've got a bit too much in, and as I rake it I can pull the soil about and ultimately try and get it leveler. We probably do that another 2 times, so that'll be rake it, heel toe it, rake it again, and then one final heel toe and a light raking. Then it'll be super firm but not over compacted, super smooth and perfect for just rolling those turfs out. So I'm just lightly raking this area that's been heel toed, and I'm not pushing hard with my rake, I'm just kind of almost letting the weight of the rake get into the soil and fluff up those top 1 or 2 centimetres. Now as I'm doing it, it exposes any areas where there's a bit of an undulation, a dip in the soil that we've levelled out, and there's one there in fact. So what I'm going to do is it's a bit higher here, so I'm just going to scrape a bit off the top into that dip, and then again it's a bit higher here, so I'm going to push some across there with my landscaping rake. It's brilliant, I think, landscaping rakes, especially for this job. Now as you can see that's nice and smooth now, so I shall leave that, carry on, and when we go back over there with the heel toe method, that area will sink again but the undulation won't be as deep. I'll just simply be compacting that loose soil I pushed in there, I'll be compacting that down, and then the next time I rake it I'll just have to put a little bit more loose soil in. We'll heel toe it one more time, which will compact that down again, and more than likely I'll find that that area will be perfectly level and perfectly compacted. Okay, so we've got all the soil levelled out, we've got it nicely firmed down with the old heel toe method, and it's now time to start turfing it. So I've started laying the turf. I've got my first row down. The reason I do it nice and straight like this in the middle of the area to be turfed is that when I lay the rest of the turf, it goes up and down in rows, and it actually looks like someone's mown it with stripes when you've finished. So we got all the soil levelled out, we firmed it down nicely with the heel toe method, and now, as you can see, we've started turfing. The first row I did was right up this side, lovely straight line, it's tight up against the flower bed, it really frames the flower bed. Then we've continued to turf all the way across, going up and down with our rows, and as you can see, it actually looks like somebody's mown it like a croquet lawn with stripes on. Right, one key thing when you're turfing is to make sure that everything's nice and moist. We've had some really nice sunny breezy weather, which is perfect when you're out in the garden, but what it's done is it's just dried the surface of the soil out, and if I were to lay the turf on there, that dryness would just pull all the moisture out of the turf, the actual turfs would shrink, and then the grass would actually start to die. So I'm just going to give it a nice sprinkle with the hose pipe. Don't need to put lots on, just enough. Oops, a bit of air in there. Just enough to create a barrier between the dry soil and the bottom of the turf. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so I've got a few rows of turf stacked up here just next to where I'm working. It's always handy to be prepared and get your turf as near to where you're working as possible, and then once you're on site you're not toing and froing too much, and especially not walking on the newly laid turf. So here we go, I'm just going to take this down to the end, just to where we've got to. I'll just simply pop my turf down, and as you can see there's like a flap hanging down, that's the end of the roll. It's a case of matching that up against the bit you've previously laid, whittling it a little bit until it fits, and then you just fold the ends together, which makes the joint nice and neat. So there we go, I'm just rolling it out and pushing it up against the last row so the joints are nice and neat. And once I've got it down like that, I just get my metal rake, which has got a nice heavy end, and I just go around the joints, firm them together, and then if there happen to be any obvious little lumps or bumps, that one there, just give it a tap down, and there we go. That is that roll done. Time to go get another. Right, I'm just going to crack on and get these last few rolls down, and then that's almost job done. Right, so I've got all the turf laid now. The lawn is done, other than this one final job, and that is just to cut the ends of the turf where they run onto the flower bed and just make a nice finished edge to the bed. I'll leave this till the end, simply because then you can see where you've got to and actually visualise where the flower bed edge and the lawn edge need to meet. So I've got this. This is a vital bit of kit when you're turfing. It's an old wood saw, a saw that's way too blunt to cut wood, but it's perfect for cutting turf. So here we go. I just very gently score a little line that I can see across the turf, just make sure that's heading where I want it to, and then away I go with the saw. Now if you were to put a decent wood saw straight through your turf, that would be fine, but you'd never be able to cut wood with it again, because the turf and the soil below is full of sand and grit, and that just blunts your saw. But it's absolutely fine for this job. So there we go, I've cut myself a nice curve there. Just going to move down a bit. Again, just eye it through, a little bit of a scratch across, and away we go. Pull that away. So there we have it, a new lawn laid from scratch, and if you don't mind me saying so, I think it looks pretty damn good. Now, you can lay a lawn any time of year as long as there's rain forecast. That is actually a really good tip. Look at the weather forecast, see if it's going to rain, because once you've got your grass down, it waters it in. but the most ideal time to do it is the spring. If you get your turf down in early spring, it has the chance to settle down whilst the air's still cool and a bit damp, and then as things start to warm up, the roots will get in, the grass will start to grow, and your new lawn will look awesome. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see many more videos and get 10% off your next purchase.